I still remember a conversation. It was a peer at the time. We were in a bit of a conflict. I think we're hashing it out. I think we're in a pretty good spot. And she looks at me and she goes, Mark, you're going to be a really good dad. And I said, oh, thanks. I think this is about to be a compliment. She goes, because you have this unique ability to look someone deep into their eyes, into their soul, to let them know how disappointed you are. Whoa.
Welcome to the Character Effect, where real leaders leave a mark that lasts. Together, we spotlight the quiet power of integrity, grit, humility, and respect. In other words, character, and the people bold enough to lead with it.
And welcome back to the Character Effect podcast. I'm your host, Dave Vassaleros, and today I'm talking with Mark Beebe. He's the Chief Operating Officer at a firm called Enterprise Stewardship. Now, Mark believes that every leader's real work starts with transforming their own character. We would put it like becoming someone worth following. And so today we're going to dive into that. We're going to understand a little bit more about the stewardship system, purpose-driven profit, and what stewardship really means. Mark has an incredible amount of experience teaching and coaching leaders and developing people into people that others want to follow. So Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. Happy to be here.
Awesome, man. I want people to understand what you do for work and what drives you there. So this is the stewardship system, purpose-driven profit. Give me the overview so people understand what's going on.
Yeah, we primarily work with privately held faith-based businesses. At least the ownership team or CEO owner is a Christian and looking to run their business on faith-based principles. And so we work with them on what we call is creating three capitals or maximizing three capitals: economic, social, and spiritual. Most businesses are hyper-focused on the economic capital creation or economic performance. We're very much in line with that. We want to see healthy companies, and that starts with your cash flow, your P&L, your financial statements, but it shouldn't stop there. And so if it's really driven with purpose, then we should also be creating social capital and then spiritual capital through that as well. And so a real easy way to put that would be able to say, we help people create work environments where they can create good jobs, give people good friends, and help them learn about Jesus.
Well, that's easy to understand. Those who founded the firm, how did you guys look at the world and then say, this is what's needed?
Well, we really think those are the three elements: good job, economic sustenance, good friends, social capability, and to know Jesus. Those are the three elements of what you need individually and organizationally to flourish. We can look at any people population and you say, okay, if all you have is money and you don't have any friends and you don't know Jesus, it's far from flourishing. And while some theologians may disagree, is if all you have is Jesus, but you have no friends and you can't support yourself economically, well, that's far from flourishing too. But when you combine all those three things together, what else do you need? You got good community. You can create opportunity for yourself. You can support your family. You can support your community, and you're walking with the Lord and sharing him with others. That's the place where we really call flourishing. And that's been experienced over a number of years, personally and organizationally. It's really what we call stewardship, by the way, is how do we move into that life of flourishing? And then for me, it was really working with another peer advisory based organization for Christian CEOs and owners that helped me understand what that was all about. And so our paths crossed about a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago. And so we've been running together now for almost 2 years, looking to teach other people how to run their organizations this way.
Let's jump in on this concept of stewardship, because I think this is probably not a well-known or often used term in business and in leadership. And I could be wrong there. This is more your area than mine, but I would imagine, I haven't heard it that often. First of all, define stewardship for me from your point of view, and then let's talk about how it's different being a steward of something versus being an owner of something.
Yeah, it starts there. An owner would say, this is mine. I've created it. I founded it. I get to decide what happens with it. Versus a steward would say, someone else owns this and I am responsible for managing it. Now, a lot of times we think about that specifically within financial terms. So when we think of stewardship, we think financial stewardship. How am I managing my money? And that's a huge part of it. We don't shy away from that at all. But from a faith-based perspective, we would say everything you've been given comes from God. It's a gift, it's a blessing. And so while, yes, you work incredibly hard to build the business, it actually belongs to God. And when everything's over, you die at the end of your life, you no longer own that. But he has gifted you. He's gifted business owners, and I still use that word, but he's gifted business owners with an organization to steward, to lead. And so that starts again economically, but then how are you stewarding the folks within the business, your employees, the community, employees' families, right? And then the spiritual aspect of that as well. And so it's really a matter of perspective of, do I own the things that I'm currently in control of, or do I recognize it actually belongs to God? And if it belongs to God, then our perspective and the implications of that greatly change how we want to manage those things. Because if it belongs to God, that means we need to operate under God's principles to get the type of returns that are important to him. And that's a big difference. If it belongs to me, then I get to manage it in a way that honors me, right? And so a lot of times that results in my own pride, my pursuit of possessions or pleasure. But when I realize that it belongs to God, then he's at the center of my life. He's at the center of my perspective. And so rather than pride, I'm looking at how do I serve others? Rather than the pursuit of possessions, I'm looking at how do I steward capital? Rather than pleasure, we're pursuing excellence. And so those are three big shifts that we make along the way when we understand that we're stewards, not owners.
These are powerful concepts. And I think it's pretty easy to look out into the world and see the ownership side and to see, as you said, what follows a pursuit of one's own glory and honor. And there's a lot of very successful people who are unhappy. And there's a lot of not successful, financially, who are unhappy, because at the end of it, it's always the same. And maybe I'll pull a little bit of the Bible in here with the parable of the talents. One was given 5, one was given 3, one was given 1. The reward would have been the same, regardless of how much they were given, if they had been faithful stewards. And I want to point one thing out here with a word that I think is integral to stewardship, and that's accountability.
That's right.
To be a steward means that you will answer for how you were a caretaker for the things and the people. You will be accountable to someone at some point. And in this case, we both believe you're accountable to God. How does this concept of being accountable to someone outside of our own selves, how does that shape the way we look at the role we have as leaders?
Well, a couple of thoughts. Number one, we use the word capital for a specific reason, because capital is defined as excess, wealth, resources, whatever, that we're willing to put to risk. So you bring up the parable of the talents. The one servant who got in trouble was the one servant who was not willing to put what he was given to risk or to work. Being in business is not easy. It's not for the weak, right? We know this. If you're going to be a business owner or really steward an organization, it's risky. And so we use the word capital. A lot of people think, oh, you're all about wealth management. No, we're trying to help people understand that what you've been given to put at risk at some level, not reckless, but at risk. And so back more pointed to your question, really what we're talking about is if we're going to be held accountable and eternally accountable to what we've been given, then it really starts with our character. We talk a lot about moving from success to surrender. I mean, that's really the path of I'm the owner of my life to the perspective of actually God's the owner of my life and the world and everything in it. And so that's where we move from, okay, I own it, to an attitude of stewardship. But it's really a journey of character building at its heart. And are we living a life of character where other people want to follow us? And are we helping other people build their character in a way that they're worth following? Because a lot of people can build great companies. And if you look at the news, most people will focus on companies making too much profit, not taking care of their employees. It's all about money. there's plenty of that, but I think there's a number of businesses that people have no idea about that truly are being built off of character and this premise of I'm here to honor God. And so how do I do that and steward well? And so if you're committed to that, that's the most important part. And the reality is it's the most difficult part. Character development is not easy. It's easier to focus on my P&L and understand, okay, what do I need to do to grow profits or to grow revenue? Most people don't really see the immediate ROI on working on character. And so it's the long haul and it's the growth of that, but it's really crucial to do.
Let's talk about character. You said there's some hesitancy for people, or maybe it's unfamiliarity. Maybe they don't have the language, or maybe they are afraid or don't really know how to grow their character. So when you walk in, how do you start the conversation about let's grow your character?
Well, we point it first to purpose before we even talk about character, because if our perspective on purpose is off, then our character will be off as well. Or at least we're going to be talking in two different languages. So again, going back to purpose, is my life purpose to honor myself, or is it for something greater than myself? And so, we use the framework of honor yourself or honor God. But even for folks who are non-believers, is this for you, or is there something greater than yourself that you're doing this for? And that's a really important starting point. If it is for something greater, if it is to say, no, I'm doing this in pursuit to honor God, then the character conversation becomes a lot easier. When we talk about character, we really talk about three kind of virtues that follow that. It's truth, faith, and character. So it's head, heart, and hands. First, head, am I filled with the knowledge? So for faith-based leaders, am I reading scripture? Do I even know what it says about character or about purpose? And so once we have the head knowledge, the hardest part is getting from our head to our heart. And that's the true conviction of, oh, I really do believe this. If you really believe it, we found the leaders who are really, truly full of faith in that, then the extension of the hands or my actions, how do I live this out, is a much shorter distance. But it's that realization of head to heart that a lot of times it really does just take time. There can be fear around it. There can be nervousness, anxiousness, whatever, but everyone's on their own journey with it. We have several examples. I was just working with an organization a couple of weeks ago where we're having a purpose conversation. They said, look, do you want the right answer or do you want the honest answer for where we're at right now? I said, I want the honest answer. They said, well, the right answer is, yeah, we exist to honor God. The honest answer is we're really trying to create some economic wealth for the next generation of our family. And that's okay that they're there. It's the admission or the confession of, I know what should be, but here's where I am. And that's a great place to start with character, because you can at least say, okay, great. We know what the right answer is, but there's some distance between head and heart that has to happen. And that you don't put a microwave on that. You just continue to journey with people and have the conversations, and they're going to continue to walk with God in that. And God's got us all on a path where we'll learn things along the way. But it is a path and it is a journey. So I think we get it wrong when we think, okay, now I have character where I didn't have character before. I mean, come on, right? Like even the best of us, people I've known incredibly well, a ton of respect for, high character people, they still screw up. They still create a wake. They still have to apologize. There's confession involved. And so whether we think, hey, this is where I should be, this is where I am, or, the false thinking of I've made it, it's really just the recognition of, okay, God's going to continue to teach me things, usually starting with our head knowledge. I need to continue to pursue that. And hopefully in time it reaches our heart. And once it reaches our heart, it's a lot easier to act on that. I have seen leaders, I've been in trouble myself, by the way, so this is not throwing stones. When we try to skip from our head to our hands and our heart really isn't there, I found that's where we get in trouble, because there's not true alignment. You know what I mean? It's just, we're trying to be something that we know we're not yet. And that's when working with that other organization, I said, no, don't give me the should be answer. Give me the honest answer, because we can work with that, right? Let's work out of a place of reality. If I don't truly believe it in my heart, and yet I'm trying to do all these things organizationally to build social and spiritual capital, sometimes the results aren't there, and sometimes the results are there, but then it can crumble pretty quick when they realize, oh, Mark's not who I thought he was.
That's a really tricky phase, because on the one hand, there's power in action
Mhm.
to influence our hearts. If I don't necessarily believe something now, but I'm willing to put faith in someone else that I trust who's telling me, Mark's coming in and telling me, hey, Dave, this is really something that you should work on and start doing. Okay, I will do that. But the question I think comes back to, is my heart at least open to coming into alignment with what you're talking about? Or am I really just going through motions thinking that I'm going to get a better outcome? Let's just do these things and it'll be better. But I don't really want my heart to change.
Right. And I think as owners or top level leaders, we think we need to have the answer. We think we need to be right. We think we need to hold back some emotion or some things we're wrestling with. But especially as you think about the relationship between a CEO or owner and the rest of their leadership team, it's powerful to open up a conversation and say, guys, here's where I'm at. I think the right answer is we need to move in this direction from a purpose standpoint or social, spiritual standpoint, whatever. I don't know if I'm quite there yet in my heart. So how do we get there? How are you guys feeling about this? You don't have to go do a company announcement. Hey, we've rewritten our purpose statement and now everyone needs to get on board if you're not sure that you're really in it yet.
Yeah.
Start small, and you can still take some actions, but I think just the honest discussion can go a long way in making sure you're building alignment. And that in of itself, just confessing, I'm not sure if I'm quite there yet, is probably a pretty good sign of character.
Yeah, there's a humility there.
Yeah.
Right. And I think looking at the great leaders, they always say, make sure you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you and better than you and can make you better. Right. The undercurrent of that is humility, is that I don't know everything. I can't make every great decision myself. You made one comment I want to go back to, and then let's go to the next thing. But the comment was, when you mentioned this company you were working with, they said, well, the right answer versus the answer that is true. Do you find that there is some level of belief that if I am purpose driven, I'm really probably not going to be able to create generational wealth? Like, I got to pick one or the other. I'm going to be good and not as successful, but I'm going to be good and I'll be happier. But I really want to do this financial thing over here. So how do you work through those two maybe competing beliefs?
Yeah, I think that belief exists a lot within leaders, but it also exists in the market. Let's say you put a flag out there saying we're a Christian business. I think a lot of people think, ew, the Christian business, does that mean it's less excellent? Right. And I think there's a reality of kind of the culture looks at that as almost not a bad thing ethically, but am I going to get the same quality? And so I think that's one of the reasons we're a little bit afraid of it. But yeah, there is a fear, because when you start talking about purpose, you start talking about social, spiritual capital creation, the very question is, well, how much of a distraction is this going to be? Is this going to make us less efficient? I would say some signs or some phrases that kind of show where someone's at. The person who in a meeting says, maybe it's a social capital meeting, it's some sort of social gathering in the office. Someone says, I wonder how much money we're spending on man hours that we could be getting things done. Well, that's a person who's really wrestling with, is this a distraction or is this really worth it? Because it's harder to measure the social results. It just is. It's harder to measure the spiritual results. It's really easy to measure your P&L. We know if we're winning or losing. But I think the more you take little steps and you just go along your journey, what's the next step God's asking you to take within your business in terms of purpose or character creation, et cetera, you start to curate lists of stories. You start to see how people are impacted by it. And so what we do is we encourage people to measure the outputs economically, but we encourage them to measure the inputs socially and spiritually. And I know a lot of people would disagree and say, no, you can measure outputs spiritually too. And you can, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But our encouragement is just do what you know God is asking you to do and be faithful in that. God will water it. He'll get results. But when we do that, then we're more collecting impact stories versus trying to worry about, hey, did we get salvations this week or this year?
Yeah.
Not bad to desire that, but what are we really trying to emulate or build into our behavior? And then we'll have stories on the other side of that.
We've begun this journey now to improve our character. We have purpose. We're aligned. We want to start working. There are certainly times in my life where I have felt like I'm really growing in this area and I'm working hard to do that. And I have been slow to look behind me
Mm.
and see that in my effort to grow and improve, I may have neglected someone or something that was important. I may have made it harder for someone else. You and I spoke about it before, and you use that term where you leave a wake. Let's talk about the wake and how do we deal with the wake?
Yeah, the leadership wake is big. I mean, we tell people when you're developing someone for their future, the next job, et cetera, once they're about 80% ready is when you release the reins and you let them go for it. Now, I personally benefited from that in my career. I feel like a lot of the promotions I got, especially early on, I was not qualified or quite ready for, but I had done enough and built in some trust. And so you do it. But I'm embarrassed to look back in early leadership positions and say, oh my goodness, I really did some damage with this person or that person. I forget the official name for it, but it's the idea that we judge ourselves by our intentions and we judge everyone else by their behaviors. Well, our intentions may be great, but our behaviors may be pretty harmful. And I think as leaders, we don't spend enough time back to humility to say, where in my development of character, where in my development of leadership did I create a wake of bodies behind me? And unfortunately, I have not found a way to truly grow in leadership or character or any other area without reps and experience, which means the first few times through it, we're probably not very good, which means we might be creating a wake of things that we're not proud of. I still remember a conversation I had, this was several years ago. It was a peer at the time who we were in a bit of a conflict, and I was very frustrated because I felt like work product that was supposed to be done and ready and packaged was not. I ended up spending a lot of time having to redo and get some stuff ready. Anyway, so there was this issue on the table. My son at the time was, I don't know, 2 years old, right? And so this person, I think we're hashing it out. I think we're in a pretty good spot. And she looks at me and she goes, Mark, you're going to be a really good dad. And I said, oh, thanks. I think this is about to be a compliment. She goes, because you have this unique ability to look someone deep into their eyes, into their soul, to let them know how disappointed you are in them. Whoa. I was very much taken aback by that. Here's the reality. In my journey of leadership and how I deal with people, I used to hate conflict, hate it. Like I would avoid it. Just do more work if you have to. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have hard conversations. And so through that process, I started way overcorrecting because I didn't know how to find the proper way to do it. And so I look back at that and it's funny. And I think, well, did I really do that? I don't know. But to that person in my leadership journey, I made her feel awful. And it wasn't my intention, but it was the reality. So I think that's a quick example of something I look back at now and I'm like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe I did it. I can't believe she said that back to me.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept because when we are, and I'm going to say younger, but as we are getting our first opportunities to grow, to get the reps as a leader, maybe we have one or two direct reports, it's a smaller team. That moment is so inward focused. We're like, okay, what do I got to do? I want to make sure I do it right. I got to learn everything. I got to do everything right. It becomes about us. And it's a very interesting paradox that as we do that to learn and grow and get our own reps to get better, we have to learn or at least be aware that it's not just about us. Even at that level, it can't always just be about us.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about moving from pride to service of others. And I think a lot of us early on in our careers, you are trying to establish yourself, right? And it becomes very inward. I think the other danger on the far end of that scale is when you've been doing it for a really long time. And the other lie is I've kind of got it figured out. I've been on this journey of trying to serve others for so long that I forget that I still do some damage. It's almost like we put on this armor of like, no. I talk about character. I understand these things. Whatever. Well, there's still plenty of mistakes in there. And a lot of it, frankly, is just, I would consider personality differences, right? When there's a big difference between a senior leader and someone else on the team, and they communicate in different ways, they need different things. And when we don't bend to them, and we expect them to bend to us. Even if it's not egregious, it's still creating a bit of a wake. And so I've seen some tremendous leaders, some that I loved working for, some I have tremendous respect for. My peers in those situations have also been deeply hurt at times. And I would look at it and say, well, I don't really understand why. But again, from their perspective, it really hurt. And here is why. And so it's like, oh, okay. So again, our intention doesn't mean that we're free from responsibility.
And as you're talking about it, I'm reviewing some things in my own mind about my life. As you said, people who've been around and maybe done it a long time and they really value these things get a little comfortable, a little complacent. And I just ran through a couple stories from probably the last year or so where that was me. I'm not going to share them because they were a little personal for others and for myself, but that was me. I thought I knew what I was doing and I had it under control. I really cared about people. I ended up making some pretty bad decisions and some consequences.
Yeah.
Right? So that's me, people. That's me. I'm sure there's more of us out there, but and so what it brings me to is perhaps the most important character trait for a leader from which all the other things can grow is humility.
Yeah.
Humility is, and again, if you look scripturally and you look to Jesus, he was the greatest, yet he was below all of us. He washed the feet. That story gets me every time, where he washes the feet of his disciples. I mean, feet were they're disgusting now, but feet back then
Yeah.
were really gross. And there he was. And I think that if we can be humble enough to say, wow, I screwed that up, then we can have a platform to develop these other character traits that we want to develop and we need to develop. Have you had a person, a mentor or a leader in your life who you looked at and were like, this is a humble person and this is how I know? Anything like that come to mind?
Yeah. I mean, I've had several. They're not perfect. So go back to humility. Humility starts out of perspective. Well, my perspective is I own all this, it's mine. I'm typically less humble. When my perspective is this is something for greater than myself, I exist to honor God. When Jesus is acting in a way that says, I'm going to fulfill the purpose of my Father, that's perspective. And we see tremendous humility that we look at and we're like, how could he? I don't do that, right? I want to follow Jesus, but not like all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because our perspective isn't quite as pure as his. And so that's there. But I think that's the starting point. One of the characteristics of a humble leader in my mind, when I see this, it's like, okay, they've got something figured out. His confession. How I've seen it lived out is one, the closer you get to your owner, your CEO, you really do get to learn where their heart is in all of it. And again, they're not perfect, but it's just in relationship. It's like, I trust their character, so I will follow, but they still make mistakes. And so when they actually come back and they say, hey, I'm sorry for, or I made a mistake, now so-and-so's upset, I need to fix it. That is just a huge marker for me, saying, okay, I don't expect anyone to be perfect, but the people who refuse to apologize for something or recognize that they created a wake, that's harder for me to follow in the long term. And so I've had a number of leaders, my current owner, previous CEO, previous founder, example of doing these things. Here's one thing I do want to point out. If you talk so much about purpose and character and serving others, it feels like, well, can I still run a company in a way that is profitable, that is efficient, that's doing the things we know how to do? It almost leads to a spot where like, I'm not even allowed to fire anyone because I'm all about serving people. And so that's the ditch on the other side. And in a lot of ways, that's the weight of being the leader, is you have to hold these things in tension of sometimes serving someone or serving the organization is making a really, really hard decision. So making someone mad is not a sign that you don't serve people. Hurting someone is not a sign that you don't serve people. And to the outside, it can look like, wow, Dave's a real jerk. He talks about all these things, but he just laid off X amount of staff. Like, well, yeah, you're stewarding a business. And there may be times where unfortunately it gets there. That doesn't mean that you're an evil person or you don't try to serve people or all these things. It's just the reality of running a business. At times you're gonna have to make really hard decisions that will hurt people. And the reason I bring that up and talk about the leadership wake is I just think we should be honest about, through that character development and through that maturing process, it's okay to hold both of those things at the same time. And it's not to beat each other up, but it is a reality that we need to be mindful of. What are we doing and how is it going to impact the others behind us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad you brought that up. My youngest son turns 18 today, which is mind blowing to me. And over 4 boys and 25 years of parenting, I can tell you this without reservation. It is love and service to tell the truth. It is love and service to hold people accountable.
Mhm.
Those things are the same. Those both are the same. It's love and service to care and listen, and it's love and service to tell the truth and to hold people accountable. And I think that when we can get there as purpose-based leaders, then we're like, okay, we're on the right track. And I think people will respond to that. I think they will. I've heard plenty of stories where the morale goes up when people understand that they're held accountable, but the bosses hold themselves accountable.
Right.
The managers are humble and expect everyone else to be humble. It's when everyone's on the same page that we can deal with that stuff without it causing fracture.
Right.
So let's finish up. You're a person who does this every day. You have a lot of experience with all different kinds of businesses and different kinds of leaders. What is the advice that you have? Let's say right now, we have all these people listening to the podcast. Many of them are business leaders. What's the very first thing you would want them to do to start on this path towards character development?
One of the things I would encourage people to do is a little bit of a inventory of who's on my leadership team today. And is there a wake that's been created that I haven't made right? And say, okay, who do I need to be humble with? I think it's a very worthwhile process to start some conversation around character and character development. And then from there, be evaluating, what is our purpose? What is my purpose personally? And what is our purpose organizationally? And where are we? Are we head knowledge? Are we heart? Or are we living it out? And if you can understand where you are there, then I think the next steps become really clear. And so that would be a great starting point as you're looking at character development. And then, we're big believers in principles drive practices. And so start there, understand your principles. We have 4 principles: honor God, serve people, pursue excellence, and steward capital. Those are the 4 things we look at. And out of those 4 things, everything drives our practices, our systems, our operations. When we can get really, really clear on what are your principles, it should be influencing your business operations and how you're doing everything. And so if you feel like, hey, yeah, we're clear there, we're aligned, or whatever we need to do with our current leadership team, then we can start evaluating, does the rest of our business follow out of these principles? And so that's what I would encourage people to look at. And certainly if people want help with that, then we love helping other organizations and other leaders do that work.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things my kids will say, they're going to put on my tombstone, is a saying I say, which is, what you do says more about what you believe than what you say you believe. And I think that gets to this principles thing.
Yeah.
If you want to know what your principles are, look how you spend your time and your money,
Right.
and work backwards, and then be like, oh, maybe those aren't the principles that I want, but be honest with what they are, because that's what you're doing already.
Yeah. It goes back to the right answer or the actual answer.
The actual answer. That's right. Mark, this is amazing. And if anyone who wants to learn more about this, you can go to enterprisestewardship.com or hit Mark up on LinkedIn. He's very responsive. Obviously, Canny is all in on the development of character. And where we come to it is there's not enough talk about it. It's not a thing that we talk about in business school. It's not a thing we talk about at our all hands meetings every week. Like, we just don't talk about it enough. Part of that is in our hiring process. Are we talking about character? And we didn't get to touch on hiring. That's a big part of running any sort of business, the type of people you bring in. But if folks like you and us and so many others can make character a part of our daily business vocabulary, it will start to rise. It will rise up in people's minds. They'll see the example of leaders who are trying to live that way, and it will make a better world. And I know that's one of the things that you believe in at Enterprise Stewardship, is our businesses can make the world a better place. That's certainly our goal at Canny. I know that's your goal, Enterprise Stewardship. It really should be everyone's goal, and I hope it would be. Mark, seriously, thank you for joining me. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and your thoughts and your advice. I think we can do this. one day at a time, we can make character a thing that drives business.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a blast, and I will continue to come back to perspective. Why do I exist? Do I exist for me, or do I exist for a higher purpose? Do I exist to honor God? That's the first question individually we have to ask if we're going to go down this road. And if we get that first question right, then at a minimum, it lays out a clear path forward for how we build character from there.
Awesome. Mark, thank you. And to you and the team at Enterprise Stewardship, best of luck. This is Dave with the Character Effect podcast, and we hope that you've learned something or gained something of value in this. And if you have, feel free to share and subscribe and like and all those other things that we all love. Until 2 weeks from now, we'll talk to you then.
Thank you for tuning in to the Character Effect podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. But in the meantime, give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform.